Good afternoon. Can you? Hello, I can hear myself. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming in. I was worried about the other mob who left, and I thought there was nobody left, but you're here. So my name is Mark Cooke. I work for a company called BigID, and you're very welcome to come and see us out there. And in case I forget, we've also got an after-event party this evening, free entertainment and things. So you're very, very welcome to come along to that. You can register on our stand, and you can just come across to the Hilton Olympia. So I know that it's often thrilling to have a vendor stand in front of you with a lot of PowerPoint and tell you about how good we are and how we do everything. And I'm not going to do that. So what we've decided instead, because I was only in a meeting yesterday when somebody said, but can you, Mark, just tell me, please, tell me about one of your customer experiences. How have they used BigID? You know, what were the problems and the issues they faced? What did they actually achieve? What were the outcomes? You know, what was the benefit? So what we've done here is dragged a customer of ours along, and he's carefully chained to his seat. And Garry Manser is going to share with us then his experience of using BigID at Vanquis Bank. And we're going to pretend we're in a fireside chat, that there's a crackling fire, and none of you are actually here. So, Garry, do you want to say who you are?
Yeah, well, he's already introduced me. One thing to update on the slide is I'm actually now head of data governance for the whole of Provident Financial Group. So as a group, we do vehicle finance through Moneybun, we do credit cards through Vanquis, and we do loans through both the Provident and the Vanquis brand. Our reason as a company is to help people that most of the big banks won't touch, help them build their credit record and actually be able to move on in society. So it's that lower prime area that we look at. But yeah, happy to be here. Mark did drag me in. I was just walking past outside, but yeah, looking forward to a chat.
Thank you for being here.
Although I feel like I'm in trouble at the moment.
For being here voluntarily. So listen, the way we're going to do this is I was actually involved in this cycle on that sort of pre-sale side of things. So it's a bit bizarre sort of seeing it from this end. But I guess that's also a good sign that I'm there and I'm here now. And it all started with a bit of Gdpr compliance. So what we're going to tell you a story about really is how a bit of privacy regulation and compliance has really led to data discovery, going through really, go through data discovery and data stewardship, and really establishing a framework for data governance. So, Garry, tell us, please, what started this whole thing off with your GDPR?
So, well, we don't need to talk about the GDPR. I think everyone knows what that was. But from a Vanquis point of view, when we were looking at it, we've got data around our customers that sits in various different systems. And the issue we have is probably, and I've got to go careful because my boss is sat there, but our IT stack probably isn't the most up to date. We celebrated recently that we switched to a 2012 server from 2002, so you can imagine how bad some of it actually looks. What we were looking at from a records retention and GDPR point of view was, where did we actually hold our data? We have something like 500 data stores on-prem. We have 400 in the cloud, and they're actually the same data in different places under different people. So what we wanted to look at first of all was, how do we identify what shouldn't be there from a data discovery point of view, and then how can we automate that and look at that going forward? Most of you in the room were probably running around in 2018 trying to get things done. We're still going through that journey just now. So yeah, our journey to it was, we've got far too much data in far too many places. We needed to tidy it up somehow.
And how did you stumble on BigID?
That was a good one. And that was actually about a month before I joined. We had a fantastic project manager at the time, and she reached out to Gartner. And Gartner were very much of the viewpoint that BigID would be the best tool for us. They gave us 2 or 3 to look at. Unfortunately, I can't remember the other 2, so please don't ask me who they were. But the reason we looked at BigID was the correlation piece that was most important to us. We know which data we shouldn't hold. We know our accounts that have closed. We know our accounts that we've charged off. We know our employees that have left. What we weren't able to do is spend the time looking at those data sets. I was doing some work in vehicle finance a couple of days ago, and we were looking at doing something similar there, and we worked out if we got an individual to go in and check every single data file for every single customer, we're looking at 20 years of man years for one person. So we knew we can't do that. To go and start checking data stores, to run code, to do everything else we needed to do, it just wasn't going to happen. So we needed that correlation piece where we have a data set that says this is what we don't want, and it goes and finds it across our estate. And we're able to identify it, we're able to move it beyond use, and we're able to delete it.
And I better just explain to you who don't know what BigID is. So, I mean, you used the phrase there, correlation. So BigID, we've invented a number of machine learning-based data discovery techniques, and what we're trying to do is to reduce the manual effort, which is what Gary's describing now, through the data curation process by trying to bring some AI, if you like, intelligence to discerning what is this bit of data and what does it refer to or relate to, because that can take a lot of manual cycles. So go on, then we've got data discovery, and then that forms the foundation for other things, I guess.
It does, yes. So one of the things we actually did was, having spoken to Mark at length around the tool, as with most tools, these things take a while to, 1, learn, and then 2, implement. And working with Mark, he actually suggested that we used a third-party provider. So we're working also with Nephos Technologies, who provide data governance as a service. So we were able to move quite quickly. With Nephos, Nephos actually control, they upload the tool, they get access to our data, they build the business rules for us that actually goes and looks for the data. We don't have to do anything. My team then gets the bit at the back end, so the bit we really want to get control of. I didn't want to spend 2 years writing business rules. I've done that in so many different tools, most of which are out there and I'm probably not allowed to say. This time I wanted to get moving and actually get the data identified. So while we had Nephos and BigID building the infrastructure, we were working with our business to identify data stewards. And like most businesses, we went out and we asked for volunteers, and everyone put their hands under the table and sat on them and everything else. But we've actually managed, especially in the cards and the vehicle finance business, we've managed to identify some really good people. They're at quite a senior level, not normally where I would have pitched data stewards to be, but they're able to come in and go, I understand that, I know what that means, and actually go and talk to that person in my team and they will fix it for you. So what we get through the tool now, and I'm probably jumping questions around, but what we get now is BigID goes in, it scans the tool, it identifies it, it pushes it up into the data governance as a service tool in Nephos, and my data stewards go in and they have a binary piece of work to do. They get told where the file structure is. They get shown a picture. If it's unstructured data, they get to see a picture of what that document looks like. They can go and have a look at that document if they really want to, but they've got a binary decision at the bottom, clean up or don't. And if they don't clean it up, they've got to give us a reason why, because we need to make sure we have that. But it takes the time away from them. They can actually scan through a list, tick things off as they go, and be in a really good position. As an organisation, that means we're cleaning up stuff quicker, and I know we're coming on to some of our mistakes and lessons learned in a second, but it gets us to that point of view that quite easily we know where our bad data is, and we're now working on actually moving it across.
And could you just spend a second to talk about the different types of data that are part of this cycle and this process? Because I remember that when we were talking at the very beginning, it was about structured and unstructured. So, and that was quite interesting because you meet a lot of companies, they have problems around unstructured and they think structured is actually very simple, and which by the nature of being structured, we know what's there. So,
yeah, most of our work has been in the unstructured space to start off with. We know there's so many documents out there. We like everybody, we have a records retention process, but actually the data that builds up in people's folders and SharePoint and Teams and everything else just got scary. So we've been able to go in and scan at that document level and actually identify things, and have a very interesting lesson to tell you about in a minute. But at the same time, we're able to look at our structured tables, and working with Nephos, they're providing us with SQL scripts that will actually go and move that data beyond use. What's really good, though, is we're able to leave a calling card behind. So if I move a structured file or an unstructured file, there's a little note that's left behind that says, we've taken this file away from you, go speak to Garry in data governance and he might give it back. Something along those lines anyway, but that's where we're able to go. The other bit we were able to do from an identification point of view was actually start to look at SAS tables as well. And I did it myself. I used to work for Bank of Scotland. I used to write SAS code. I wrote so many tables where this is just a step to table 2, this is a step to table 3. Never went back and deleted any of it. And our structure was that we had SAS tables going back a number of years. But what we're able to do is treat those as unstructured data. We're able to go in, we're able to scan them, able to identify the ones that we need to move. The only difference being is that we have to go and move those manually because we can't get the tool to quite work. But do you know what? That's only a few tables. It's not every single file, like I said at the beginning.
Yeah, it's probably worth just mentioning again, you know, from a BigID point of view, because what we're trying to be is a data discovery tool across the entire data asset in the organization, whether it's structured, unstructured, on-premise, in the cloud, whether it's at rest, whether it's streaming. So we're all about discovering it and then classifying it so that, again, you understand what you've got it in business terms. I guess, so why did you do it with BigID?
Again, it was the fact that it was easy to identify the information. As I said, the correlation piece is so powerful. It's worth going and seeing the demonstration on it. That ability to find data across the landscape and identify it. It was the opportunity that we had as well that BigID worked closely with Nephos, so we could actually roll out alongside Nephos and get the tool working quite quickly. It's interesting, we still have a project meeting every Friday. You wouldn't be able to tell in that meeting who's Nephos and who's Vanquis or PFG, because we built that one team structure. We call on Mark and the guys when we need them, but we just get the job done. There's been hiccups along the way that I know we're coming on to, but from a scanning point of view, we're definitely getting the job done. We're able to identify. We've identified, and I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong, and Sarah and my team will shout at me, but I think we've scanned over 2 billion documents and identified 200,000 potential issues. And we've done that in the last 6 months. So we now get the opportunity to go and remediate those using the managed service. But to be able to go and do that quickly has been really important for us as a bank.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. So the next bit is a bit tricky because there's a camera recording all of this and you've got your boss over there. So lessons learnt, mistakes, good, bad and the ugly.
Yeah, the first one was I got far too excited, and I will pick on him now. We actually went live from signing the contract. We were able to scan our first data files within 6 months. We didn't need to rely on Vanquis IT. We were able to build it through Nephos and BigID. So we were able to go quite quickly. We scanned our first files and I got really excited and I took my boss John into a room, got a screen probably about that size, put the tool up and went, look what we've done. We went into the files and John being an analyst by trade as well, said, search my name. And I quite cockily sat there and went, your name's not going to come up, John. He said, yeah, so search it then. You shouldn't be worried. I searched John's name and it appeared 3 times in a list in 3 different documents. And he's sitting there going, I haven't left yesterday, let alone 7 years ago. But actually what we found, it was quite an embarrassing moment for me, but what we found was how powerful the tool actually was. The reason those documents came up were they were HR letters that had been sent to John 10 years ago, and the signatory had left the organisation 8 years ago. And the scanning had actually found the signatory, not the person the document was about, and that was why they were actually shown. To us, it was a really, really good thing. It showed how powerful the tool actually was. What it did mean was we had to spend another month trying to work out how we didn't get that coming up every single time. But yeah, it's quite an embarrassing moment when you run into your boss, you drag him into a room and you tell him, look how great this tool is, and he proves it wrong the first time. We've also, over the period of time, we've been working with Nephos and building a remediation tool. So that actually physically moves the data for us. Because of our structure, because it's a totally brand new thing, we've had a couple of hiccups there. So we're probably not where we wanted to be today, but we're in a really good place. And we've now got that tool working. And Sarah and my team of data stewards will start moving data across the organization in the coming days. So yep, it's great to have these wonderful ideas. It's great to go running to your boss and tell him how great you are. But if anyone ever decides to do that, go and check it first and search his name, because it can be quite an embarrassing moment.
What about the future? I mean, what are you thinking about in terms of building on the platform?
We're now looking at what else we want to do with data governance. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I now have the group role. We're looking at how we can actually start to build governance at a group level. So we do things in our Money Barn part of the business. We do things in our Vanquis part of the business. And we hold the same data in the same places about the same things. We're now looking at how, as we start to move and we start to go for a whole transformation program, how we can use both the BigID tool and also the work that we do with Nephos Technologies to actually speed some of that up. I want to be in a position that my boss is telling me that in 18 months' time, we'll be on the new infrastructure. I want to go live day one on the new infrastructure with governed data. Going back to anyone that was in the room previously, there was a little green, no, sorry, it wasn't, it was a different one. Everyone's talking about little green ticks against their data sources. I want that against mine, using the work that we do with BigID, using other tools and the work we do with Nephos, but be in a position that as we move into a new world, it's fully governed and everyone's hitting the ground running. Rather than, yeah, we go live tomorrow and I'm 6 months down the line because I'm not ready to do stuff.
Gary, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'll unlock you in a second. There's a few minutes left for any questions. There's microphones there. So if anybody would like to interrogate Gary or this use case any further, then what I'm going to say, whilst I give you some more time to compose the question carefully in your mind, something deep and incisive.
One thing we did find...
Oh, there's one, there's one over here. There's one over here. Oh, there's 2 now, you see. It's like diarrhea.
Mark's only getting me talking, because if not, he'll just talk for hours and you'll all be falling asleep.
Yes, I'm not allowed to do this normally.
Afternoon.
Hello.
This is a question for Gary. In terms of your sort of data governance strategy, this is a question with regards to retention and in what ways you potentially would use BigID.
BigID, no, well done. Just say it a few more times. Let's do it together. BigID.
I mentioned you said you searched up your boss and his name came up from about 10 years ago. So I'm just wondering, just from a retention standpoint, how would you utilize BigID to identify and possibly help with the whole retention process?
So we need to split the retention into two, first of all. We're talking records retention with BigID rather than data retention. Although it does some of the data retention for us, we want to be in a better place. So in our records retention space, we have legal requirements to hold data for periods of time. So what we're able to do is we've been able, when I was talking about that learning set, we've been able to go in and go, well, we know all the accounts that closed more than 7 years ago. So that's when our relationship ended. And what BigID does is it takes that list and then goes and fires across our data universe to actually pull back every time that happens. The other bit we need to look at is data retention. So all of those lovely PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets and everything that we do, we're looking to bring that period down a lot lower than our records retention piece. There's some data we have to hold for 10 years. We don't need to hold a PowerPoint presentation for 10 years, although there's probably people in the room that have done that. What we're looking there is, do you know what? If nobody's looked at it for the last 18 months, we're going to can it. Because it's not part of an annual process. It's not something that you're using on a day-to-day basis. All it's doing is costing us space. And actually, there's a risk to the organisation that somebody picks it up and they use out-of-date data. So there's two sides to it. The records piece is very much based on lists. The data piece is very much more based on usage and the ability to identify when something moved.
Okay, so was there another question? And that was dangerous. You put your arm up there, nearly got a question. And there's one just there. Oh, is there another? We're going to time out.
So my question is around the open data. So how big data is tackling the regulatory bodies of opening the data from the financial industry as the energy industry? So we need to open the data, and how the big data, the BigID has taken this into account.
That's probably one more for you, looking at open data, open banking data.
Open banking data. I missed the question. You have to say it again.
How do BigID look at open banking data?
Oh, okay, gotcha, sorry. So listen, one of the clever things about BigID is I talked about the machine learning capability. So, and I said things like it's supervised and unsupervised. So, and when it's unsupervised, that means, you know, we've got some machine learning based discovery techniques that just work straight out the box. But when there's some specific data, and like contextual data, I mean, it's easy to find data that follows certain set formats and patterns, but there's a lot of contextual data in an organization. So what we have with our supervised machine learning, that means we train the BigID software with a sample of your data. So if you want to find certain banking type data, then we're going to train BigID to understand and recognize what that data is, and then we go off and discover it across your organization. Okay.
Hi, it's Kat here from Manser. I just wanted to ask a quick question with regards to the fact that you need to look into all that data that you're transforming and moving around. Have you considered data lineage? And if so, what was your option?
That's next step. So we're not looking at that at the moment. That one is even scarier than records retention. But we are looking at various different tools that potentially can do that for us in the future. We just don't do it today, unfortunately. So,
shameless. That was shameless plug for your lineage tool that was integrated to BigID. So, one more question. Microphone. One more. We didn't realize it was going to be so popular. There we are.
Hello. I was just wondering, when you do your specific searches and you're finding systems that have clients who have left the bank within or beyond 7 years, were you able to use that to work out any trends for finding entire databases that really shouldn't be used? Were you able to find like frequent offenders or places where you're getting more hits than others?
it was more as we started to look at the data stewardship piece. So again, I'll call her out and embarrass her. Sarah and my team over there has spent the last 6 months going down to a granular database level and looking at who's using it and who the data steward for that database is. We've used BigID to scan it to understand if there's any PI and anything in there that we need to be aware of. But actually what we're doing is, and it's something Larry English taught me 20 years ago, we're switching it off. So if nobody puts their hand up and says, I'm going to own that data, we switch it off and we take it away from people. It goes into an archive for 4 weeks and then it disappears. And we found by being that brutal, it's training the organization to go, do you know what, I think I need to do something here. One classic example, we had one database that actually had 131 key processes working on it for one of our business areas. They told us they didn't use it. We told them we would switch it off. We were able to go and do some scanning on there, and 99% of the usage was one person in one team. And they were the team that said, it's not our data. So it's a mixture of how we use BigID to scan it and actually just being nasty and going out there and going, do you know what, if you don't want to do something about this, we'll take it away. It takes away a risk to the bank then.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. So listen, I just want to thank Garry for being here and just being you and telling the story. And I want to thank you for sitting through this and listening to us. So thank you very much. Remember, there's the after party. It's there somewhere. You can read it for yourself. And we're down on the bottom right-hand corner. So thank you very much indeed.